now. Hello and welcome to the virtual Beyond Shakespeare podcast. This video is continuing on from Tamburlaine the Great, Acts 1 and 2. So if you haven't watched that video, then you might want to go back and watch that video to catch up with where we are. I am Robert Crighton, your host and general overseer of this little lockdown virtual session. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to the team that is going to be reading Acts 3 and 4 of Tamburlaine the Great, Part 1. However, as far as we're concerned, it's not Part 1, it's just Tamburlaine the Great by Christopher Marlowe. Part 2 is not even a little twinkle in the eye of Marlowe yet. And we're treating this very much as a single unit of action. If you didn't catch the first two acts, broadly speaking, there was a king of Persia. Tamburlaine killed him, and there was some politicking going on. It was all very fiddly, but pretty much everybody who's not part of the central gang is now very deaded, or enslaved, or worse. The only important recurring characters from the first two acts are a captured Princess Zenocrate, whom Tamburlaine captured along with various servants and her baggage train, etc., who he immediately declares his love to. And there we should mention a bit of a trigger warning here. There is some violence coming up, and there are references to sexual violence as well. So be warned for that. Otherwise, Tamburlaine is surrounded by his trusty lieutenants, variously pronounced or unpronounced, depending on our abilities. We may stumble with some names as we go, as we try and make some decisions about how to say their names. So there's Techelles, there's Usumcasane, and there is Theridamas, who joined Tamburlaine from the other side. Otherwise, that's pretty much where we are at. I will now introduce you to the team of readers today who are variously playing lots and lots of different parts, so we may be pausing occasionally so they can swap who they are. So first off, to introduce themselves, playing the King of Argier, Usumcasane, Zabina and Arabia are, or is.
Hello, I'm Pamela. I am an Irish actor based in London, and today is going to be a test of all of my various accent skills. So I'm looking forward to that.
Next up, playing a slightly shorter rostrum, but a roster. Words. I should be better at this. A selection of people playing a Basso, Zenocrate and the Soldan is...
Hi, my name's Sascha Cooper, and I'm an actress, dancer, choreographer, theatre director, voiceover artist, and makeup artist, and holistic, insightful life coach, and psychic medium and reader from Brighton in the UK, where I'm based for lockdown. And today is going to be very much... having died yesterday, I'm very grateful to be, like the Christ himself, risen again.
As we approach Easter, it's always nice to throw those little things in. So, playing the King of Fez, Theridamas, Ebea, and potentially Anippe as well, is...
Hello, I am Sarah. I am an actor, a director and a writer. I run a little audiobook company called Sounds Curious, and I'm very happy to be here.
And taking on the mantle of Tamburlaine, because we do change who's playing who day by day to see what interesting things come out. Playing Tamburlaine himself, the King of Morocco as well, and a messenger is...
Hi, my name is William Sutton, and I'm an actor, and I'm based here in Amsterdam.
And finally, playing Bajazeth and Capolin is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott. I last trod the boards some 40 odd years ago, but I've done quite a bit of voice work with Robert over the years on assorted mystery plays and other slightly strange pieces.
Right. Well, in that case, we are going to dive in. As say, I am currently only down to read Techelles, who I actually read yesterday. That is just a pure coincidence. I will also be covering stage directions and occasionally pausing to open up comments. If anyone has thoughts in the middle of a scene before we're likely to pause, there is a chat option as well in the Zoom setup. You can always type thoughts into that, which I can leap towards you if you've got something, so that I'm not doing the goldfish thing of going. Anybody got any thoughts? Anybody got any thoughts? Lovely. So we're going to start with a relatively short opener to Act 3, Scene 1. Tamburlaine in the previous scene has just been crowned King of Persia, and there's all sorts of pomp and excitement. However, we now are introduced to a series of other kings and potentates. Enter Bajazeth with kings of Fez, Morocco, and Argier, with others in great pomp.
Great kings of Barbary and my portly Bassos, we hear the Tartars and the Eastern thieves, under the conduct of one Tamburlaine, presume a bickering with your emperor, and think to rouse us from our dreadful siege of the famous Grecian Constantinople. You know our army is invincible. As many circumcised Turks we have, and warlike bands of Christians reigned, as hath the ocean or the terrene sea, small drops of water when the moon begins to join in one of her semicircled horns. Yet would not we braved with foreign power, nor rage our siege before the Grecians yield, or breathless lie before the city walls.
Renowned Emperor and mighty General, what if you sent the Bassos of your guard to charge him to remain in Asia, or else to threaten death and deadly arms, as from the mouth of mighty Bajazeth?
Hie thee, my Basso, fast to Persia. Tell him thy lord, the Turkish emperor, dread lord of Africa, Europe, and Asia, great king and conqueror of Gracia, the ocean, terrene, and the coal black sea, the high and highest monarch of the world, wills and commands, but say not I entreat, not once to set his foot in Africa, or spread his colours in Gracia, lest he incur the fury of my wrath. Tell him I am content to take a truce, because I hear he bears a valiant mind. But if, presuming on his silly power, he be so mad as to manage arms with me, then stay thou with him. Say, I bid thee so, and if, before the sun have measured heaven with triple circuit, thou regret us not, we mean to take his morning's next arise. For messenger he will not be reclaimed, and mean to fetch thee in despite of him.
Most great and puissant monarch of the earth, your Basso will accomplish your behest, and shew your pleasure to the Persian, as fits to the gat of the stately Turk.
And exit the Basso.
They say he is the king of Persia, but if he dare attempt to stir your siege, 'twere requisite he should be 10.
Oh, I'm afraid we've lost you,
He's
Pamela.
frozen.
Your delightful accent work. You have frozen,
all
I'm afraid. Okay. Are you still with us sound-wise?
Did you hear any of it?
We got the first bit, but I think you did stretch out a bit. I wasn't sure if it was the accent or the computer. Say something now?
They say he is the king of siege, 'twere requisite he should be 10 times more. All flesh quakes at your magnificence.
True, Argier, and trembles at my looks.
The spring is hindered by your smothering host, for neither rain can fall upon the earth, nor sun reflects his virtuous beams thereon. The ground is mantled with such multitudes.
All this is true as holy Mahomet, and all the trees are blasted with our breaths.
What thinks your greatness best to be achieved in pursuit of the city's overthrow?
I will the captive pioneers of Argier cut off the water that by leaden pipes runs to the city from the mountain Carnon. 2,000 horse shall forage up and down, that no relief or succour come by land, and all the sea my galleys countermand. Then shall our footmen lie within the trench, and with their cannons, mouthed like Orcus Gulf, batter the walls, and we will enter in, and thus the Grecians shall be conquered.
And thus the scene ends. Hopefully Pamela is still with us.
I'm not sure how good it's going to be.
Okay, well, we'll battle on, and hopefully it'll be fine. I did hear your replies, so there's a bit of lag, but I think it's fine. Okay, so this is our first introduction to Bajazeth. Thoughts about him as a chap? And obviously we've had some earlier kings to contrast with. How are we feeling about him?
Sounds like a nasty piece of work, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
He's got it together. He seems to be in charge. He seems to be a match for our man Tamburlaine.
Yeah, that's the question. You know, who are we rooting for? Are we rooting for anyone? You know, because we've been a bit seduced last time with Tamburlaine and his words, but he was mostly fighting incompetence, whereas this chap seems to have it together. It's also there's that thing of what elements of this play have been stolen by Game of Thrones,
Practically all of it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the thing of the circumcised Turks in the army reminds me very much of the Unsullied in Game of Thrones. This idea that you chop the genitals off people. In some way, shape, or form, they become much better fighting force. In this case,
Janissaries are the role model for both.
So there's that sort of element to it as well. They're ruthless enough to do that in this othering that this play is doing as well. Any other thoughts before we move forward? I seem to have lost Sarah, so which is probably fine.
She's just re-emerged.
I was just sneezing. Sorry.
That's right. So that's sort of a nice pen portrait of the next antagonist for Tamburlaine. There. Next scene, we're moving back to Zenocrate with assistants. The people who came with her. She's been captured by Tamburlaine, and now sort of thinking about her thoughts ahead. So, eyes down, enter Zenocrate, Aegidas, and Anippe with others.
Madam Zenocrate, may I presume to know the cause of these unquiet fits that work such trouble to your wonted rest? 'Tis more than pity such a heavenly face should by heart's sorrow wax so wan and pale, when your offensive rape by Tamburlaine, which of your whole displeasures should be most, has seemed to be digested long ago.
Although it be digested long ago, as his exceeding favours have deserved, and might content the Queen of Heaven, as well as it hath changed my first conceived disdain. Yet, since the father passion feeds my thoughts with ceaseless and disconsolate conceits, which dye my looks so lifeless as they are, and might, if my extremes had full events, make me the ghastly counterfeit of death.
Eternal heaven sooner be dissolved, and all that pierceth Phoebus' silver eye before such hap fall to Zenocrate.
Oh, life and soul still hover in his breast, and leave my body senseless as the earth, or else unite you to his life and soul, that I may live and die with Tamburlaine.
Okay, I'm just going to pause there before we go into the next stage direction. There's quite a lot to take in on just 25 odd lines there. This is quite a dramatic shift. Thoughts from the room here, people?
Zenocrate is very much in trouble now, I think. I mean, it's clear she's been through hell through some of her responses. There's a mention of rape, a potential rape here. I don't know whether it's supposed to be taken literally, but you know, we can assume that some unpleasantness has happened. But really and truly, she's now, from what I've seen so far in that text, it's looking like she's resigning to her fate. But yeah, she knows she's trapped.
Oh, she's more than resigning to her fate. I mean, she's got Stockholm syndrome, hasn't she? She's actually she's fallen in love with him.
I was going to say, yeah, but at the same time, I know what you're saying about the Stockholm thing. I just think, though, there's also that sense, though, you know, I don't know whether it's just because of the rape comment, but I think it's not just a love thing. She is, it's almost like this forced situations kind of had to make her see things differently. But there's been a lot of manipulation going on for certain on Tamburlaine's part with her, for sure.
But there's a time jump as well. You know, it's this really I think that it's not just that it was this offensive rape by Tamburlaine, but it seemed to be digested long ago. It's like it happened a while ago.
That's right.
And by this figure of someone who's nominally supposed to be on Zenocrate's side, someone who's come with her, but whose position is not is difficult, because if anything, though in theory they're there to serve Zenocrate, that they're in perhaps even a different kind of trouble, because they have no standing in society at all. Whereas Zenocrate in theory does, or has. So what their motivation is as well, and I think there's a lot of complexity to this. As well as also, this is something written by some bloke 400 years ago, and thinking that maybe we're trying to make it better than it is, if that makes sense. Trying to try to make it work in a way that maybe we just have to say this proposition is possibly doesn't. I'm just flagging that. It's a challenge for any modern production. What do you do with this proposition? Any other thoughts before we move on to what happens next? Because it gets a bit more complicated now. This short scene comes in several parts.
This is very much the beginning of Game of Thrones, indeed, with Daenerys. And this is her in the tent when she's in the very beginning of her whole saga. It's pretty much the scene has been lifted and transposed onto Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the question of that's acceptability in our climate, even within 10 years, slightly less, has actually sort of magnified what's happening with this over a much longer time period. What artistic decisions are you making about what you're presenting as a wider narrative? And that's why I bring up the maybe obvious parallel there, but I think it's a good analog. So the scene gets a bit more complicated. So because enter behind, and Tamburlaine, you're going to have to do a lot of work for this scene.
I'm just hanging back.
Yeah. Enter behind Tamburlaine with Techelles and others.
With Tamburlaine. Ah, fair Zenocrate, let not a man so vile and barbarous, that holds you from your father in despite, and keeps you from the honours of a queen, being supposed his worthless concubine, be honoured with your love, but for necessity. So, now the mighty Soldan hears of you, your highness needs not doubt, but in short time he will, with Tamburlaine's destruction, redeem you from this deadly servitude.
leave to wound me with these words, and speak of Tamburlaine as he deserves. The entertainment we have had of him is far from villainy or servitude, and might in noble minds be counted princely.
How can you fancy one that looks so fierce, only disposed to martial stratagems, who, when he shall embrace you in his arms, will tell how many 1,000 men he slew, and when you look for amorous discourse, will rattle forth his facts of war and blood, too harsh a subject for your dainty ears.
As looks the sun through Nile's flowing stream, or when the morning holds him in her arms, so looks my lordly love, fair Tamburlaine. His talk much sweeter than the muses' song they sung for honour 'gainst Perides, or when Minerva did with Neptune strive, and higher would I rear my estimate than Juno, sister to the highest god, if I were matched with mighty Tamburlaine.
Yet be not so inconstant in your love, but let the young Arabian live in hope after your rescue to enjoy his choice. You see, though first the King of Persia, being a shepherd, seemed to love you much, now in his majesty he leaves those looks, those words of favour and those comfortings, and gives no more than common courtesies.
Thence rises the tears that so disdain my cheeks, fearing his love through my unworthiness.
Tamburlaine goes to her and takes her away lovingly by the hand, looking wrathfully on Aegidas, and says nothing. Exeunt all. So, question here is, who does Zenocrate at any point during this early element of the scene see Tamburlaine? Does Tamburlaine's entrance come in where it comes in? Does that, could this scene mean something slightly different to what we're on the surface seeing, that Zenocrate is straightforwardly declaring her love, and Aegidas is saying, no, wait, you could still marry your betrothed, which is an interesting question whether she would be able to if she has actually indeed been assaulted. And lots of questions there. Thoughts from the room?
It feels to me as if he's present but not noticed by the two ladies talking. I think he's hovering in the background.
I'd agree.
I don't know though. She might. I mean, I'm just thinking. I've got my director's head on here, but this scene, if you staged it, it would be so much more horrifying if Aegidas had no clue what was going on. Zenocrate actually did, if she could see him or she was aware that he was there.
Because then it's a game that Zenocrate is playing the role of, because she knows that's how to survive. It may not be I think Alan to some degree is right. I suspect that is not the intent of the author. I think it's just he overhears. But I think in a room of actors and with an audience, especially today, it gives it a spin that makes this a much more complex scene.
Yeah, and I think she's certainly, if he is present, despite what the text actually says, I think he's definitely there earlier. Especially there's a clue in the text for me which gives this. It's when it's after she says, and might, if my extremes had full events, make me the ghastly counterfeit of death. When Aegeus speaks and tries to basically build her up, I've got a feeling Tamburlaine is spotted by her, because she immediately changes with, life and soul still hover in my breast. It seems quite an abrupt change to what she was saying before.
It's very demonstrative, isn't it? Yeah. Suddenly there's this
I mean, maybe I don't know what the next speech is. So Aegidas could also be there on the orders of Tamburlaine to find out how she really feels about him as well. I don't know if I'm pushing it too far now, but we'll find out in a second when he speaks by himself about where he stands.
I think that's a good response in terms of what the audience might be wondering, what games are going on.
That's really interesting as well, because at the end of that, I haven't read this through yet, and at the end of that scene, I was thinking, oh, this is not going well. This is not going to be good now. You are for it, mate. But now you said that, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, actually, is my character meant to be doing this? Intriguing.
Shall we find out?
Oh, yes.
Let's
find out.
Okay, Aegidas is left alone to soliloquize.
Betrayed by fortune and suspicious love, threatened with frowning wrath and jealousy, surprised with fear of hideous revenge, I stand aghast, but most astonished to see his collar shut in secret thoughts and wrapped in silence of his angry soul. Upon his brows was portrayed ugly death, and in his eyes the fury of the heart that shone as comets, menacing revenge, and cast a pale complexion on his cheeks. As when the seaman sees the Hyades gather an army of Cimmerian clouds, Auster and Aquilon with winged steeds, all sweating, tilt about the watery heavens with shivering spears enforcing thunderclaps, and from their shields strike flames of lightning. All fearful folds his sails and sounds the main, lifting his prayers to the heavens for aid against the terror of the winds and waves. So fares Aegidas for the late felt frowns that send a tempest to my daunted thoughts and make my soul divine her overthrow.
Re-enter Techelles with a naked dagger and Usumcasane. See you, Aegidas, how the king salutes you. He bids you prophesy what it imports.
I prophesied before, and now I prove the killing frowns of jealousy and love. He needed not with words confirm my fear, for words are vain where working tools present the naked action of my threatened end. It says, Aegidas, thou shalt surely die, and of extremities elect the least. More honour and less pain it may procure to die by this resolved hand of thine, than stay the torments he and heaven have sworn. Then haste, Aegidas, and prevent the plagues which thy prolonged fates may draw on thee. Go, wander free from fear of tyrant's rage, removed from the torments and the hell wherewith he makes excruciate thy soul, and let Aegidas by Aegidas die. And with this stab, slumber eternally.
And Aegidas has stabbed himself. Usumcasane, see how right the man hath hit the meaning of my lord the king.
Faith, and Techelles, it was manly done. And since he was so wise and honourable, let us afford him now the bearing hence, and crave his triple worthy burial.
Agreed, Casane. We will honour him. And they exit, clearing the body away as they go, because, you know, they're tidy actors. And you don't want to leave poor Aegidas just lying there for the rest of the evening.
Not really.
Again, we've got that dark humour coming in there. You can't really not just have that sort of just going, because it's just the workmanlike of, he figured it out.
Well done.
Well done, mate. Well done. It's very dark, especially, but also funny from a scene that really isn't funny before. It is that shifting tone thing. I mean, it could just be played as pure darkness and terror. But I think there is that potential to tonal shift in there. Any additional thoughts?
I must admit, having not read ahead on this at all, and working on the initial dialogue between Agides and Zenocrate, the way it came across to me was that Agides was actually a handmaid or female familiar of Zenocrate, and then suddenly, it turns out it's male. What?
Well, it's interesting because it seems to be that it is supposed to be a lord. It is mentioned, I think, in the opening cast listing. But it has a certain logic that it could be cast as female in a modern production. It has that feeling. Yeah, Pamela.
I was just going to say, I think, even if you were a woman traversing the desert back then, you would carry a weapon, so that wouldn't necessarily preclude them from being female.
Yeah.
I have to say I was playing her as female.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't go back and look at the cast list when I just kind of assumed she was a handmaiden.
But yeah, it's I think that is flexible very much in the reading for how you perform it today. I think there's without shifting meaning too much, you get an interesting resonance with that, which is interesting. Let us, however, scramble ahead, because that was quite slow, which was good. But now we're getting back into plot.
Ooh.
The big, meaty, manly stuff. Now we're going to stop and start a little bit here. The bell will ring when everybody has to stop being the followers of Tamburlaine and become kings following Bajazeth. We will signpost that very clearly. So, scene 3, enter Tamburlaine, Techelles, Usumcasane, Theridamas, Basso, probably the one we heard from earlier, Zenocrate, Anippe, with others in the background.
Basso, by this thy lord and master knows I mean to meet him in Bithynia. See how he comes. Tush! Turks are full of brags, and menace more than they can well perform. He meet me in the field, and fetch thee hence. Alas, poor Turk, his fortune is too weak to encounter with the strength of Tamburlaine. View well my camp, and speak indifferently. Do not my captains and my soldiers look as if they meant to conquer Africa?
Your men are valiant, but their numbers few, and cannot terrify his mighty host. My lord, the great commander of the world, besides 15 contributory kings, hath now in arms 10,000 Janissaries, mounted on lusty Mauritian steeds, brought to the war by men of Tripoli, 200,000 footmen that have served in 2 set battles fought in Greece. And as for the expedition of this war, if he think good, can from his garrisons withdraw as many more to follow him.
The more he brings, the greater is the spoil, for when they perish by our warlike hands, we mean to set our footmen on their steeds and rifle all those stately Janizars.
But will those kings accompany your lord?
Such as his highness please, but some must stay to rule the provinces he late subdued.
Then fight courageously. Their crowns are yours. This hand shall set them on your conquering heads that made me emperor of Asia.
Let him bring millions infinite of men, unpeopling Western Africa and Greece, yet we assure us of the victory.
Even he that in a trice vanquished 2 kings, more mighty than the Turkish emperor, shall rouse him out of Europe and pursue his scattered army till they yield or die.
Well said, Theridamas. Speak in that mood, For will and shall best fitteth Tamburlaine, whose smiling stars give him assured hope of martial triumph ere he meet his foes. I that am termed the scourge and wrath of God, the only fear and terror of the world, will first subdue the Turk, and then enlarge those Christian captives which you keep as slaves, burdening their bodies with your heavy chains, and feeding them with thin and slender fare, that naked row about the Terrene sea. And when they chance to rest or breathe apace, are punished with bastoness so grievously that they lie panting on the galley's side, and strive for life on every stroke they give. These are the cruel pirates of Argier, the damned train, the scum of Africa, inhabited with straggling renegades that make quick havoc of the Christian blood. But as I live, that town shall curse the time that Tamburlaine set foot in Africa.
And we've got a development very much of Tamburlaine's oratory here, isn't it? This is a proper mission statement / pet talk, and he's got his followers well trained as well. We've got the followers doing, we'll take their crowns, because he's now passing the goods down lower the orders. It's not just him who gets kingdoms, it's his followers are being offered crowns as well. And that's slightly different. Tamburlaine from yesterday. How did that feel in comparison with Tamburlaine of today?
Well, we said yesterday, didn't we? He's a smart politician as well as being a formidable soldier. He knows how to handle men. He knows how to woo them, how to mesmerize them and get them to his cause, but he also knows how to keep them, because he keeps them by making them personally invested in his victories. And so he's just really clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to Khosrow and my cities the other day, who just didn't know how to work their men at all. They just assumed they had power, whereas Tamburlaine's making direct offers. He's geeing them up. He's making war fun again, and giving them what they want. And he's still impressive, but it's that tone. It's slightly harder. He's getting better at this, being the military leader. And I think that's a tonal shift we may see more of. We may see where this goes, as we're now almost halfway through the play, pretty much, in that sort of general area. Any other thoughts before we all change our hats and become the opposing team, coming in to meet Tamburlaine?
He's kind of behaving a little bit more Roman than everybody else. I mean, it's really like Caesar's Gallic Wars. If you've ever looked at them and the way that he strategizes, and this is pure strategy coming to the front right now.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good connection there, and it's interesting. You've got the Basso coming in doing the sort of laying out of all the these are the arms. We've got all these tanks and missiles doing. I've seen the street parades. We've got all this gear. We've got all this coming your way, and he's not actually for all that very impressive. It don't impress me much. In the way that the oratory that follows is, but then again, he's only he's not very high up the chain. Because Bajazeth's coming in to with his kings under him to this parley. So for the moment, all the followers of Tamburlaine will now be the various kings of Fez and Morocco, and we'll pause before I swap them all back again. So imagine Tamburlaine is surrounded still by his army. Enter Bajazeth, Basso's the King of Fez, Morocco, Argier, plus also Zabina and Ebea.
Bassos and Janissaries of my guard, attend upon the person of your lord, the greatest potentate of Africa.
Techelles and the rest, prepare your swords. I mean to encounter with that Bajazeth.
Kings of Fez, Morocco and Argier, he calls me Bajazeth, whom you'll call Lord. Note the presumption of this Scythian slave. I tell thee, villain, those that lead my horse have to their names title of dignity. And darest thou bluntly call me Bajazeth?
And know, thou Turk, that those which lead my horse shall lead thee captive through Africa. And darest thou bluntly call me Tamburlaine?
By Mohammed, my kinsman's sepulchre, and by the holy Al-Quran, I swear, he shall be made a chaste and lustless eunuch. Sorry. And in my saddle 10 my concubines, and all his captains that stoutly stand shall draw the chariot of my empress, whom I have brought to see their overthrow.
By this my sword that conquered Persia, thy fall shall make me famous through the world. I will not tell thee how I'll handle thee, but every common soldier of my camp shall smile to see thy miserable state.
And we'll just briefly pause there. So we're now going to have essentially a little mini face-off of the followers as they all sort of go, my king's better than your king. And I'll read the King of Morocco for this little bit so that we're not swapping Tamburlaine. So first, on Bajazeth's side, we have...
What means the mighty Turkish emperor to talk with one so base as Tamburlaine?
Ye Moors and valiant men of Barbary, how can ye suffer these indignities?
Leave words, and let them feel your lance's points, which glided through the bowels of the Greeks.
Well said, my stout contributory kings. Your threefold army and my huge coast shall swallow up these base-born Persians.
And then everybody swaps around as we're now all on Tamburlaine's side again. Puissant, renowned, and mighty Tamburlaine, why stay we thus prolonging all their lives?
I long to see those crowns won by our swords, that we may rule as kings of Africa.
What coward would not fight for such a prize?
Fight all courageously, and be you kings. I speak it, and my words are oracles.
Zabina, mother of 3 braver boys than Hercules, that in his infancy did pass the jaws of serpents venomous, whose hands are made to grip a warlike lance, their shoulders broad for complete armour fit, their limbs more large and of a bigger size than all the brats is sprung from Titan's loins, who, when they come unto their father's age, will batter turrets with their manly fists. Sit here upon this royal chair of state, and on thy head wear my imperial crown, until I bring this sturdy Tamburlaine and all his captains bound in captive chains.
Such good success happen to Bajazeth.
Zenocrate, the loveliest maid alive, fairer than rocks of pearl and precious stone, the only paragon of Tamburlaine, whose eyes are brighter than the lamps of heaven, a speech more pleasant than sweet harmony, that with thy looks canst clear the darkened sky and calm the rage of thundering Jupiter. Sit down by her, adorned with my crown, as if thou wert the empress of the world. Stir not, Zenocrate, until thou see me march victoriously with all my men, triumphing over him and these kings, which I will bring as vassals to thy feet. Till then, take thou my crown, vaunt of my worth, and manage words with her as we will arms.
And may my love, the King of Persia, return with victory and free from wound.
Now shalt thou feel the force of Turkish arms, which lately made all Europe quake for fear. I have of Turks, Arabians, Moors, and Jews enough to cover all Bithynia. Their thousands die, their slaughtered carcasses shall serve for walls and bulwarks to the rest. And as the heads of Hydra sow my power, subdued, shall stand as mighty as before. If they should yield their necks unto the sword, thy soldiers' arms could not endure to strike so many blows as I have heads for them. Thou knowest not, foolish hardy Tamburlaine, what 'tis to meet me in the open field, that leaves no ground for thee to march upon.
Our conquering swords shall marshal us the way we use to march upon the slaughtered foe, trampling their bowels with our horses' hoofs. Brave horses bred on the white Tartarian hills, my camp is like to Julius Caesar's host that never fought but had the victory. Nor in Pharsalia was there such hot war as these, my followers willingly would have. Legions of spirits, fleeting in the air, direct our bullets and our weapons' points, and make your strokes to wound the senseless light. And when she sees our bloody colors spread, then victory begins to take her flight, resting herself upon my milk-white tent. But come, my lords, to weapons let us fall. The field is ours, the Turk, his wife, and all.
Exit Tamburlaine with followers.
Come, kings and bassos, let us glut our swords that thirst to drink the feeble Persian's blood.
And exit Bajazeth with his followers, leaving behind Zabina and Zenocrate for the oddest tea party that can be had. And I do love what's coming up next. I find that absolutely fascinating and a brilliant bit of stagecraft. But what we had the two very blokey teams mouthing off, doing the calling out, trying to psych the enemy. And then also Tamburlaine and Bajazeth call upon their spouses to do as almost like you sit here, you're going to be, you're separate, and it's like my wife is better than your wife, kind of gay. It's really weird.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm overselling that thing, but there's still a squaring off, psyching out thing going on here in this run up to battle that we're not going to see. Thoughts about what you've just witnessed?
I find it kind of that they both have an arrogance, that they would bring their wife and their court to watch this. They're so confident in their own victory that they're like, well, you just sit here, drink some tea, watch us. It'll be over in 5 minutes, kind of thing.
Yes, war as spectator
know thy
sport.
Place. Like a woman know thy place type thing. But at the same time, this is also, if you go further down into this scene, what's interesting is the fact that Tamburlaine seems to be in a stage now where he's kind of getting, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but some of the language he's using, it makes the impression that he's very much getting carried away with this newfound power of his. And you're right about the kind of face-off in a way, because it's like, oh yeah, what I've got's better than you anyway. How do I know I can trust you? But it seems to be a very OTT way of establishing a sort of trust. If I'm going to work with you, you've got to accept what I've got. I'm better than you. You listen to me. It's that kind of thing. In a way, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah.
And is there an element? I'm guessing because I don't know what's going to happen. But is there an element, because those speeches that we've just had, they were really, ginning everybody up for battle. And of course, presumably, we're not going to have that battle because Marlowe couldn't have had hundreds of people on the stage. He just wouldn't have had room for them. So is this face-off between the wives? Is this going to be like an alternative? It's like, the audience have all got G'd up for battle. All right, there's going to be a fight, and we're not actually going to see that fight, obviously. So,
broadly speaking, yes,
we get this instead.
We get the male pre-fight setup.
Yeah.
And then we have this much smaller little battle of wills coming up.
Yeah.
In the rest of the scene. And we will emphatically not see the battle that's coming. We will hear it. It will intrude. But we're not going to have the kind of running on sword fight kind of thing, which we probably had earlier.
So that's
it's
quite
changing it over from the previous fight.
Yeah, so that's quite a clever way of doing it, isn't it?
Mm.
Because, like, you know, he doesn't want to create, having G'd everybody up, he doesn't want to create bathos by just having a couple of guys fighting on stage. So instead the camera cuts away effectively, and we get this kind of interesting substitute.
It's a psychological war that's going on here.
Yeah, it's clever.
And if we were to put a bit more of a slant on it as well, he's also using the power of suggestion. So even as this sort of tete-a-tete with the ladies comes up, the reality of what's going on in the background, the fact that people can hear the battle going on in the background, that's actually more psychologically horrifying than if we were to actually see that. And again, if I was to stage it, you know, I'd do it so that in the awkward silences, or maybe at certain points, maybe do it so that some of the words with the ladies cross over with maybe a scream of a stab or something like that, just to add to the horror that's actually going on behind the scenes.
I think at that point we should really read ahead, because we're going to have fun, I think, with what's coming up.
Just one thought, Robert. Actually, yes. I just wonder whether there's actually a forward reference to "He Who Must Not Be Named."
Yeah, then don't mention it.
Along the lines of, when we speak of horses, imagine you see them.
Yeah, we're not going there. Sorry. Okay.
I would like quickly to say Julius Caesar was mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
That's fine. Other Julius Caesars are available. Okay. For this reading, I'm going to take on Anippe, or Anippe, or however she is pronounced, because it makes no sense for Sarah to be reading both handmaids. So the battle is going on, and we have Zabina, Zenocrate. Think of this as a battle between the two of you, with a few assistants around you, and there may be some sounds occurring.
Base concubine, must you be placed by me, that am the empress of the mighty Turk?
Disdainful Turkus, an unreverent boss, call'st thou me concubine, that am betrothed unto the great and mighty Tamburlaine?
To Tamburlaine, the great Tartarian thief.
Thou wilt repent these lavish words of thine, when thy great Basso master and thyself must plead for mercy at his kingly feet, and sue to me to be your advocate.
And sue to thee? I tell thee, shameless girl, thou shalt be laundress to my waiting maid. How likest thou her, Ebea? Will she serve?
Madam, she thinks perhaps she is too fine, but I shall turn her into other weeds, and make her dainty fingers fall to work.
Hear'st thou, Anippe, how thy drudge doth talk, and how my slave, her mistress, menaceth? Both for their sauciness shall be employed to dress the common soldiers' meat and drink, for we will scorn they should come near ourselves.
Yet sometimes let your highness send for them to do the work my chambermaid disdains. And at this moment in the narrative,
Ye gods and powers that govern Persia, and made my lordly love her worthy king, now strengthen him against the Turkish Bajazeth, and let his foes, like flocks of fearful roes pursued by hunters, fly his angry looks, that I may see him issue conqueror.
Now, Mahomet, solicit God himself, and make him rain down murdering shot from heaven, to dash the Scythian's brains and strike him dead, that dare to manage arms with him that offered jewels to thy sacred shrine when first he warred against the Christians.
By this, the Turks lie weltering in their blood, and Tamburlaine is lord of Africa.
Thou art deceived. I heard the trumpet sound as when my emperor overthrew the Greeks and led them captive into Africa. Straight will I use thee as thy pride deserves. Prepare thyself to live and die, my slave.
If Muhammad should come from heaven and swear my royal lord is slain or conquered, yet should he not persuade me otherwise, that he lives and will be conqueror.
So, it's very much like watching a sporting event of going, come on, you Reds.
It is a bit, isn't it?
Because from that first battle sounding, and we can assume that it's probably trumpets sounding the charge or something like that, maybe some other impositions, that from that point, if they were having tea before and being very genteel, from this point they go, come on, my side, yeah. And it get more involved in it as it goes. And that confusion of battle as well, of that they don't know who's won. You know, they're making ironic pronouncements from Zabina there of I'm going to make you my slave, and that's really nice.
You could almost get into the 1970s television wrestling with the elderly lady sitting there, rip his leg off, and hit him with a sloppy end.
Yes.
You could actually.
Or I don't know if anyone's seen Glow.
Yeah.
Yes,
Netflix.
I was going to say Glow. Yes, Liberty Bell versus that Russian. Oh my god! Seriously, that had elements of that going on in there. That was so fun.
Okay, so the battle now interferes with with them on stage, or that's how it seems to be from the text. So Tamburlaine and Bajazeth will now re-enter along with various other people, and it might get a little confused, but hopefully the doubling will work for the rest of this scene. Bajazeth flies and Tamburlaine pursues him. The battle is short.
Now, King of Bassos, who is conqueror?
Thou, by the fortune of this damned foil.
Where are your stout contributory kings?
Re-enter Techelles, Theridamas, and Cassani. We have their crowns, their bodies strow the field.
Each man a crown. Why, kingly forty faith. Deliver them into my treasury.
Now let me offer to my gracious lord his royal crown again so highly won.
Nay, take the Turkish crown from her, Zenocrate, and crown me Emperor of Africa.
No, Tamburlaine, though now thou gat the best, thou shalt not yet be Lord of Africa.
Give her the crown, Turkis. You are best.
Takes it from her.
Injurious villains, thieves, runagates, how dare you thus abuse my majesty?
Here, madam, you are empress. She is none.
And gives the crown to Zenocrate.
Not now, Theridamas. Her time is past. The pillars that have bolstered up those terms are full in clusters at my conquering feet.
Though he be prisoner, he may be ransomed.
Not all the world shall ransom Bajazeth.
Ah, fair Zabina, we have lost the field, and never had the Turkish emperor so great a foil by any foreign foe. Now will the Christian miscreants be glad, ringing with joy their superstitious bells, and making bonfires for my overthrow. But ere I die, those foul idolaters shall make me bonfires with their filthy bones, although the glory of this day be lost. Africa and Greece have garrisons enough to make me sovereign of the earth again.
Those walled garrisons will I subdue, and write myself great lord of Africa. So from the east and to the furthest west shall Tamburlaine extend his puissant arm. The galleys and those pilling brigandines that yearly sail to the Venetian Gulf and hover in the straits for Christians' wreck shall lie at anchor in the Isle of Saintes, until the Persian fleet and men of war sailing along the Oriental Sea have fetched about the Indian continent, even from Persepolis to Mexico, and thence unto the Straits of Gibraltar, where they shall meet and join their force in one, keeping in awe the Bay of Portingale and all the ocean by the British shore. And by this means I'll win the world at last.
Yet set a ransom on me, Tamburlaine.
What? Think'st thou Tamburlaine esteems thy gold? I'll make the kings of India, ere I die, offer their minds to sue for peace to me, and dig for treasure to appease my wrath. Come, bind them both, and one lead in the Turk. The Turkess let my love's maid lead away.
They bind them.
Ah, villains, dare you touch my sacred arms? Oh, Mohammed! Oh, sleepy Mohammed!
O cursed Mohammed, that makest us thus the slaves to Scythians rude and barbarous.
Come, bring them in, and for this happy conquest, triumph and solemnize a martial feast.
And exeunt. I like the fact that Tamburlaine's ambitions are now to capture the whole world, but only up to the coast of Britain. He's not
Yeah.
planning
Right.
of moving in, you know.
Too cold.
No. So I quite like that. My overall thought, because we've reached the end of the act, Act 3, it took 2 acts for Tamburlaine to vanquish his last enemies. It only took 1 act to take out Bajazeth, but he is not done with him. And this is where we're starting to see a narrative shift in what's happening with Tamburlaine, because he's not just killing them or you know, dispatching them. He's captured them. And we're going to see in a moment where that goes. Any thoughts about, again, the shifting sands that is Tamburlaine himself?
One thought actually on this bottom of page 34. I just wonder whether there's a typo, which may well be from the original source, which is "Give her the crown, Turkess, you were best." I wonder whether that should actually be "beat."
I assumed it meant best as in you were bested.
To do it, yeah.
It's either beat or bested, I think, rather than best.
No, I think best is fine. I think best is fine.
Yeah, I just assumed it meant bested. Like,
yeah. Because we got a best in the previous lines as well. So it's turning up a lot. So I don't think so. I don't think so. There were a couple of minor things that I was sort of looking, but that might just be people misspeaking. So I'm not going to police saying, no, we should have said that correctly, because I don't think there's editorially much really going on with this text. I think it's from one source and it's pretty much the same every edition. So I'm not too worried there.
Okay.
And it's interesting because Zenocrate gets a crown, and whatever we ascribed to her acquiescence earlier, she's getting things out of it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So
she's definitely enjoying the shift, shall we say, in power, especially as Tamburlaine seems to be giving her more to do than she was before.
Okay, here's a question. This might be overdoing it again, but is inflicting cruelty upon others, which is perhaps part of what's happening with her, a way of deflecting from potential cruelty towards her? As
very likely.
That's a very psychological interpretation, isn't it?
It is.
It's like a very, I mean, from a modern understanding, you would say, yes, you know, that's what hangers-on do, like the bully the weakest so that the bully doesn't bully you kind of thing. But I don't see why, I mean, Marlowe, I mean, God, how old was he when he wrote this? Early 20s? He has such an understanding of human nature. I mean, the way he builds up Tamburlaine and creates his character, I don't see why he wouldn't have that thought, you know, why he wouldn't he could have put that really psychological interpretation in there. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why not either. So,
because as I say, I mean, it doesn't matter to some degree if we're loading onto the text, but I think that's an option again for performance of mitigating elements that feel like they're uncomfortable for us to deal with today.
And I mean, the text will bear it, won't it? I mean, there's nothing that anyone suggested today is outside the realms of possibility. It all kind of fits together psychologically. So if the text will bear it, then why not? You know.
And of course, we have mentions of religion. We have Muhammad, and the Quran is mentioned in passing. That may or may not be significant later. But in that sense, it is quite an equal opportunities lack of respect to people so far. I mean, Tamburlaine will take out anyone. And the various cries. Any thoughts there before we move on to Act 4? No, leave that hanging for the moment. Okay, Act 4, that's fine. We can do that. Act 4, we have a complication in the narrative, which is nice. As we go back to Mummy and Daddy's home for Zenocrate and find out what's going on there. So this complication is, of course, where do Zenocrate's loyalties lie, or what are the implications of her being in Tamburlaine's camp? So we are going to go to the Soldan of Egypt with his various lords, Capolin lords, and a messenger as we open Act 4.
awake, ye men of Memphis! Hear the clang of Scythian trumpets! Hear the basilics, that roaring shake Damascus turrets down! The rogue of Volga holds Zenocrate, the Soldan's daughter, for his concubine, and with a troop of thieves and vagabonds hath spread his colours to our high disgrace, while you, faint-hearted base Egyptians, lie slumbering on the flowery banks of Nile, as crocodiles that unaffrighted rest while thundering cannons rattle on their skins.
Nay, mighty Soldan, did your greatness see the frowning looks of fiery Tamburlaine, that with his terror and imperious eyes commands the hearts of his associates? It might amaze your royal majesty.
Villain, I tell thee, were that Tamburlaine as monstrous as Gorgon, prince of hell, the Soldan would not start a foot from him. But speak, what power hath he?
Mighty lord, 300,000 men in armour clad upon their prancing steeds, disdainfully with wanton paces trampling on the ground. 500,000 footmen threatening shot, shaking their swords, their spears and iron bills, environing their standard round, that stood as bristle-pointed as a thorny wood. Their warlike engines and munition exceed the forces of their martial men.
Nay, could their numbers countervail the stars, or ever-drizzling drops of April showers, or withered leaves that autumn shaketh down? Yet would the Soldan by his conquering power so scatter and consume them in his rage, that not a man should live to rule their fall.
So might your highness, had you time to sort your fighting men and raise your royal host, but Tamburlaine by expedition advantage takes of your unreadiness.
Let him take all the advantages he can, were all the world conspired to fight for him. Nay, were he devil, as he is no man, yet in revenge of fair Zenocrate, whom he detaineth in despite of us, this arm should send him down to Erebus, to shroud his shame in darkness of the night.
Pleaseth your mightiness to understand his resolution far exceedeth all. The first day when he pitcheth down his tents, white is their hue, and on his silver crest a snowy feather spangled white he bears, to signify the mildness of his mind, that satiate with spoil refuseth blood. But when Aurora mounts the second time, as red as scarlet is his furniture, that must his kindled wrath be quenched with blood, not sparing any that can manage arms. But if these threats move not submission, black are his colours, black pavilion. His spear, his shield, his horse, his armour, plumes, and jetty feathers menace death and hell. Without respect of sex, degree, or age, he raiseth all his foes with fire and sword.
Merciless villain, peasant, ignorant of lawful arms or martial discipline. Pillage and murder are his usual trades. The slave usurps the glorious name of war. See Capolin, the fair Arabian king, that hath been disappointed by this slave of my fair daughter and his princely love, may have flesh warning to go to war with us and be revenged for her disparagement.
So once again, we have a report of what is Tamburlaine from afar. And we had a mention at the end of the last scene of white tents. And here we get the full exposition. Tamburlaine has a system of psychological warfare. If he turns up, the white flag is flying, then surrender, you'll be fine. He's an honourable man. Let it go for longer and you're all dead.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody is forewarned. This is the kind of man that's coming, but he has a certain kind of honour. And this is the reputation that's coming ahead, and the Soldan doesn't seem to be listening to that as a message. Not taking that in.
Really?
No. This may or may not be a problem. Any thoughts about that? Who the Soldan is and the nature of his court? Because we don't really have only one speaker from the court as opposed to the messenger.
Sorry.
Oh, go, William.
No, go on.
Okay, so the Soldan seems to be a ruler. It's him and only him. His word goes. He's the rule of war. But it was the tense that I wanted to make a point about. Was I don't know if you've ever heard this story that when they announced the play of the day at any given theatre in the public theatres in early modern London, they would raise up a different coloured flag depending on whether it was a tragedy, a comedy, or a history.
Okay.
I don't know whether there's actual credence to that story itself, but suddenly we find that same kind of signification happening with Tamburlaine and his tents.
And also how they decorate the interior as well, because they would have different coloured drapes that they might hang as part of a setting. So that signifier seems to cross over all ways. I think that's a really good point. Like that.
Yeah, so the audience would be really familiar with that concept of the colour of the tents bearing a message. Like they would,
and we seem to have two Pamelas now on the feed, which is confusing me. Are you still there, Pamela?
Neither one of them is.
Neither one. Maybe trying a different computer, and it's confusing the system. Okay. Any other thoughts, and we'll crack on with scene 2.
Well, the only thing is, it's only when we got to the end of the scene I actually worked out who Capolin is. Obviously, in terms presumably the fiancé of Zenocrate.
That would seem to.
So that's the way the wording seems to work at the end.
Yeah,
the trouble is, I didn't actually look at the rubric at the top as to who was who.
Yeah, it just says an Egyptian in the dramatis personae that I'm looking at, but it seems to make sense. Yes,
well,
that would fit.
When you get to that last quatrain, or the 5th line, see Capolin, the fair Arabian king.
So no, I think he's an envoy of the fair Arabian king, or is he talking of the fair Arabian king?
I think Capolin is the Arabian king, who presumably was betrothed,
Oh, yeah, so
about
he's
to be betrothed, or
Interesting.
whatever.
Yeah, so he's talking to the messenger and say, "See this bloke over here, Capolin, the fair Arabian king." He's
Yeah.
yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yes, that's yes, I think that's a definite. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pamela, are you online?
I don't know, am I?
Yes,
Yeah, you are.
We can hear
Yay!
you.
Okay, I've missed everything that's happened, so I don't know what's going on, but I'm
It's-
back. Yay!
It's fine. Tamburlaine is about to come back in. Some plot happened while you were out.
Okay,
It's fine.
cool. I'll catch up, it's fine.
Okay, so we go into scene 2. This is where things get cruel and complicated. There might be some dancing about, but hopefully we won't need to. So, enter Tamburlaine, Techelles, Theridamas, Cassani, Zenocrate, Anippe, Tumors drawing, Bajazeth in a cage, and Zabina following him.
Bring up my footstool.
Ye holy priests of
Wait
heaven,
for it. They take Bajazeth out of the cage.
ye holy priests of heavenly Muhammad, that sacrificing slice and cut your flesh, staining his altars with your purple blood, make heaven
Oh.
to frown, and every fixed star to suck up poison from the Moorish fens, and pour it in this glorious tyrant's throat.
The chiefest god, first mover of that sphere and chased with thousands ever-shining lamps, will sooner burn the glorious frame of heaven than it should so conspire my overthrow. But, villain, thou that wishest this to me, fall prostrate on the low disdainful earth, and be the footstool of great Tamburlaine, that I may rise into my royal throne.
First shalt thou rip my bowels with thy sword, and sacrifice my heart to death and hell, before I yield to such slavery.
Base villain, vassal, slave to Tamburlaine, unworthy to embrace or touch the ground that bears the honor of my royal weight. Stoop, villain, stoop, stoop, for so he bids that may command thee piecemeal to be torn, or scattered like the lofty cedar trees struck with the voice of thundering Jupiter.
Then, as I look down to the damned fiends, fiends look on me, and thou, dread god of hell, with ebon sceptre strike this hateful earth, and make it swallow both of us at once.
And Tamburlaine gets up on him into his chair.
Now, clear the triple region of the air, and let the majesty of heaven behold their scourge and terror tread on emperors. Smile, stars that reigned at my nativity, and dim the brightness of your neighbor lamps. Disdain to borrow light of Cynthia. For I, the chiefest lamp of all the earth, first rising in the east with mild aspect, but fixed now in the meridian line, will send up fire to your turning spheres, and cause the sun to borrow light of you. My sword struck fire from his coat of steel, even in Bithynia, when I took this Turk, as when a fiery exhalation wrapped in the bowels of a freezing cloud, fighting for passage, makes the welkin crack and casts a flash of lightning to the earth. But ere I march to wealthy Persia, or leave Damascus and the Egyptian fields, as was the fame of Clymenes' brain-sick son that almost brent the axle tree of heaven, so shall our swords, our lances, and our shot fill all the air with fiery meteors. And then, when the sky shall wax as red as blood, it shall be said I made it red myself, to make me think of naught but blood and war.
Oh, so we have, not only is his language getting more and more martial, we've had Scourge again, second appearance of Scourge. This is pageantry, as because we also have the image of you on your throne with your footstool. It's an image of cruelty and of war. It is the Iron Throne. that you've forged, and your message is of red and blood and everything. And yet I love the way you read that, of being so relaxed, and I'm on my throne, what should we do now?
Right? What's next?
Yeah.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah. And now, I mean, Bajazeth's he can do insults. He can spit venom so well. He's so good at that. That's fabulous stuff. And it won't stop, by the way. He's just going to keep pouring it out. But we're also the scene will close with reactions, I think, to what Tamburlaine has just presented to his court, and who's going to be reveling in it and who's going to be reacting differently to it. Any thoughts about what we've just read?
The game is afoot, my lord, as they say.
This is where he crosses the line, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
This is where he starts to cross the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think things are really going to start getting serious now, especially as the power seems to have gone to his head in very much big ways here. Especially as I mean, look at the torture he's been doing. I mean, they take Bajazeth out of the cage. God knows what's been going on in terms of torture. So, yeah, this is going to get interesting, I think.
Yeah, and that's the imagery we have to remember. We're reading it, but having that image in our heads of he's still on the throne, he's still got his feet up on Bajazeth. And these are the images that we're playing with, as well as dialogue, which is really, really well spun. Yes, it's the thing. Is this political theatre necessary? Does it need to go this far? He hasn't needed to do this before, but this is the direction. Once you start down this road, you can't really go back.
Well, it's a choice, isn't it? That's the thing. But like, okay, you could say the whole thing's been a choice. He didn't need to go and become King of Persia, but he felt that he needed to. But this is a more subtle choice. It's one thing to defeat your enemy. It's another thing to humiliate and torture them. And so, yeah, this is like, he doesn't need to do this. This is where he crosses that river into something very dark, and you don't know, do you? You don't know if he's maybe done this before, but we've never seen it before. So this is where we see the man.
It's on a different
change.
Scale.
Yeah,
he's making cages, and that's an image that has much more resonance today as well, and creates all sorts of things. Let's hear the reactions of the room as Zabina and the various other people in the room go for it. I'll do Anippe again, so that I think that makes sense. Does it matter actually? No, you can. I think do that, can't you?
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So Zabina, having seen this occurs, gets first blood in discussing it.
Unworthy king, that by thy cruelty unlawfully usurped the Persian seat, darst thou, that never saw an emperor before thou met my husband in the field, being thy captive, thus abuse his state, keeping his kingly body in a cage that roofs of gold and sun-bright palaces should have prepared to entertain his grace, and treading him beneath thy loathsome feet, whose feet the kings of Africa have kissed.
You must devise some torment worse, my lord, to make these captives rein their lavish tongues.
Zenocrate, look better to your slave.
She is my handmaid slave, and she shall look that these abuses flow not from her tongue. Chide her, Anippe.
Let these be warnings, then, for you, my slave, how you abuse the person of the king, or else I swear to have you whipped stark naked.
Great Tamburlaine, great in my overthrow, ambitious pride shall make thee fall as low. The treading on the back of Bajazeth, that should be horsed on 4 mighty kings.
Thy names and titles and thy dignities are fled from Bajazeth, and remain with me, that will maintain it against the world of kings. Put him in again.
And they put him back into the cage.
Is this a place for mighty Bajazeth? Confusion light on him that helps thee thus.
There, whiles he lives, shall Bajazeth be kept, and where I go, be thus in triumph drawn. And thou, his wife, shall feed him with the scraps my servitors shall bring thee from my board. For he that gives him other food than this shall sit by him and starve to death himself. This is my mind, and I will have it so. Not all the kings and emperors of the earth, if they would lay their crown before my feet, shall ransom him or take him from his cage. That ages that shall talk of Tamburlaine, even from this day to Plato's wondrous year, shall talk how I have handled Bajazeth. These Moors that drew him from Bithynia to fair Damascus, where we now remain, shall lead him with us wheresoe'er we go. Techelles and my loving followers, now may we see Damascus' lofty towers, like to the shadows of pyramids that with their beauties grace the Memphian fields. The golden stature of their feathered bird that spreads her wings upon the city walls shall not defend it from our battering shot. The townsmen mask in silk and cloth of gold, and every house is as a treasury. The men, the treasure, and the town are ours.
Your tents of white now pitched before the gates, and gentle flags of amity displayed. I doubt not but the governor will yield, offering Damascus to your majesty.
So shall he have his life, and all the rest. But if he stay until the bloody flag be once advanced on my vermilion tent, he dies. And those that kept us out so long, and when they see me march in black array, with mournful streamers hanging down their heads, where in that city all the world contained, not one should escape, but perish by our swords.
Yet would you have some pity for my sake, because it is my country and my father's.
Not for the world, Zenocrate. If I have sworn, come, bring in the Turk.
So many things. So, yeah, you're on the gates of your home, Zenocrate, and you're asking hubby if he will not kill everyone. And he says
He's
no.
saying no.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous world that she's in. And earlier she was happily abusing Bajazeth and Zabina, and now this is the flip side in one scene. Not much dialogue, but so much going on.
So much, yeah.
And
think
they're going to starve. Sorry, say again.
Go on.
No.
And especially as the reality, I think at this point is really hitting her now. Especially what she's just witnessed. Yet again, torture, power, stuff that she has grown to like. Now it's affecting her. It's going, wait a sec, So, so naturally, her biggest priority here, I mean, okay, it's only one line, but I think her main prerogative here is to say, look, I love you, but, can you meet me halfway here? It's what you would say in a relationship, if you were in a tricky situation. So, yeah. But the fact that he said no.
Yeah. And it is this thing that we've had earlier, it was all a game, everyone was having fun, look at Bajazeth, and you can get yourself into that mindset. And then he says, well, unless you feed them, he's going to starve to death.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone else who tries to feed him, and that's a big moment, I think, as well in this scene of graduated moments. It lures you in to enjoy the spectacle, and then I think it really tries to bring it home after the fact. If that it's trying to make the audience feel guilty, I think, or it should do.
This guy is on a changing curve. I mean, when the two wives were having their thing while the battle was happening, it was like, oh, here are the two power couples.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's what he's doing. He's making Zenocrate his power wife, and they're going to go up. But now he's really taken the turn into becoming a tyrant. And now he's really becoming. This is a tyrant already, and these decrees are just going to make it worse and worse.
Okay, talking of worse and worse, let's go over to the Soldan, the King of Arabia, the Capolin, and soldiers with streaming colours. So to break up this very internal scene, we're going to a much more outward-facing scene. Quite short, let's rattle through it.
Methinks we march as Melega did, environed with brave Argolian knights to chase the savage Caledonian boar, or Cephalus, with lusty Theban youths against the wolf that angry Themis sent to waste and spoil the sweet Aeonian fields. A monster of 500,000 heads, compact of rapine, piracy, and spoil. The scum of men, the hate and scourge of God, raves in Egyptia and annoyeth us. My lord, it is the bloody Tamburlaine, a sturdy felon and a base-bred thief, by murder raised to the Persian crown, that dare control us and our territories. To tame the pride of this presumptuous beast, join your Arabians with the Soldan's power. Yet us unite our royal bands in one, and hasten to remove Damascus' siege. It is a blemish to the majesty and high estate of mighty emperors that such a base usurping vagabond should brave a king or wear a princely crown.
Renowned Soldan, have you lately heard the overthrow of mighty Bajazeth about the confines of Bithynia? The slavery wherewith he persecutes the noble Turk and his great empress.
I have, and sorrow for his bad success. But, noble lord of great Arabia, be so persuaded that the Soldan is no more dismayed with tidings of his fall, than in the haven where the pilot stands, and views a stranger's ship rent in the winds, and shivered against a craggy rock. Yet in compassion to his wretched state, a sacred vow to heaven and him I make, confirming it with Ibis' holy name, that Tamburlaine shall rule the day, the hour, wherein he wrought such ignominious wrong unto the hallowed person of a prince, or kept the fair Zenocrate so long as concubine, I fear to feed his last.
Let grief and fury hasten on revenge. Let Tamburlaine for his offences feel such plagues as heaven and we can pour on him. I long to break my spear upon his crest and prove the weight of his victorious arm. For fame, I fear, hath been too prodigal in sounding through the world his partial praise.
Capolin, hast thou surveyed our powers?
Great emperors of Egypt and Arabia, the number of your hosts united is 150,000 horse, 200,000 foot, brave men at arms, courageous and full of hardiness, as frolic as the hunters in the chase of savage beasts amid the desert woods.
My mind presages fortunate success, and Tamburlaine, my spirit doth foresee the utter ruin of thy men and thee.
Then rear your standards, let your sounding drums direct our soldiers to Damascus walls. Now, Tamburlaine, the mighty Soldan comes, and leads with him the great Arabian king to dim thy baseness and obscurity, famous for nothing but for theft and spoil, to raise and scatter thy inglorious crew of Scythians and slavish Persians.
And thus ends a scene which again feels very much about the propaganda effort getting through. Tamburlaine is referred to by his enemies as the Scourge. He is bloody Tamburlaine. Everything that he said or that they fear of him, it's psychological warfare. So we can see the logic of what Tamburlaine's doing, and to some degree it works. And they're carrying on regardless. They're going to go into fight. They're going to do the battle. The tent colours are going to change very, very soon, aren't they? Things are not looking good.
Nope.
I think, unless anyone has a burning thing, we will rattle through to the end of this act. So this is possibly one of the even more grotesque scene coming up now, as there is a banquet set out, and to it comes Tamburlaine all in scarlet, Zenocrate, Theridamas, Techelles, Cassani, Bajazeth, drawn in his cage, Zabina, and others.
Now hang our bloody colours by Damascus, reflecting hues of blood upon their heads, while they walk quivering on their city walls, half dead for fear before they feel my wrath. Then let us freely banquet and carouse full bowls of wine unto the god of war, the means to fill your helmets full of gold, and make Damascus spoils as rich to you as was to Jason Colchos golden fleece. And now, Bajazeth, hast thou any stomach?
Aye, such a stomach, cruel Tamburlaine, as I could willingly feed upon thy blood-raw heart.
Nay, thine own is easier to come by. Pluck out that, and 'twill serve thee and thy wife. Well, Zenocrate, Techelles, and the rest, fall to your victuals.
Fall to, and never may your meat digest. Ye furies that can mask invisible, dive to the bottom of Avernus pool, and in your hands bring hellish poison up, and squeeze it in the cup of Tamburlaine. Or, winged snakes of Lerna, cast your stings, and leave your venoms in this tyrant's dish.
And may this banquet prove as ominous as progenies to the adulterous Thracian king that fed upon the substance of his child.
My lord, how could you suffer these outrageous curses by these slaves of yours?
To let them see, divine Zenocrate, I glory in the curses of my foes, having the power from the imperial heaven to turn them all upon their proper heads.
I pray you, give them leave, madam. This speech is a goodly refreshing for them.
But if his highness would let them be fed, it would do them more good.
Sirrah, why fall you not too? Are you so daintily brought up, you cannot eat your own flesh?
First, legions of devils shall tear thee in pieces.
Villain, knowest thou to whom thou speakst?
Oh, let him alone. Here, eat, sir. Take it from my sword's point, or I'll thrust it to thy heart.
Bajazeth takes the food and stamps upon it.
He stamps it under his feet, my lord.
Take it up, villain, and eat it, or I will make thee slice the brawns of thy arms into carbonados and eat them.
Nay, 'twere better he killed his wife, and then she shall be sure not to be starved, and he be provided for a month's victual beforehand.
Here's my dagger. Dispatch her while she's fat, for if she live but a while longer, she'll fall into a consumption with fretting, and then she'll not be worth the eating.
Dost thou think that Mahomet will suffer this?
'Tis like he will when he cannot let it.
Go to. Fall to your meat. What? Not a bit? Belike he hath not been watered today. Give him some drink.
They give Bajazeth water to drink, and he flings it on the ground.
Fast and welcome, sir, while hunger make you eat. How now, Zenocrate? Doth not the Turk and his wife make a goodly show at a banquet?
Yes, my lord.
Methinks 'tis a great deal better than a consort of music.
Yet music would do well to cheer up Zenocrate. Pray thee tell, why art thou so sad? If thou wilt have a song, the Turk shall strain his voice. But why is it?
My lord, to see my father's town besieged, the country wasted where myself was born. How can it but afflict my very soul? If any love remain in you, my lord, or with my love unto your majesty may merit favour at your highness' hands, then raise your siege from fair Damascus' walls, and with my father take a friendly truce.
Zenocrate, were Egypt Jove's own land, yet would I with my sword make Jove to stoop. I will confound those blind geographers that make a triple region in the world, excluding regions where I mean to trace, and with this pen reduce them to a map, calling the provinces, cities, and towns after my name and thine, Zenocrate. Here at Damascus will I make the point that shall begin the perpendicular. And wouldst thou have me buy thy father's love with such a loss? Tell me, Zenocrate.
Honour still wait on happy Tamburlaine, yet give me leave to plead for him, my lord.
Content thyself. His person shall be safe, and all the friends of fair Zenocrate, if with their lives they will be pleased to yield, or may be forced to make me emperor. For Egypt and Arabia must be mine. Feed, you slave. Thou mayest think thyself happy to be fed from my trencher.
My empty stomach, full of idle heat, draws bloody humours from my feeble parts, preserving life by hastening cruel death. My veins are pale, my sinews hard and dry, my joints benumbed. Unless I eat, I die.
Eat, Bajazeth. Let us live in spite of them. Looking some happy power will pity and enlarge us.
Here, Turk, wilt thou have a clean trencher?
Aye, tyrant, and more meat.
Soft, sir. You must be dieted. Too much eating will make you surfeit.
So it would, my lord, especially having so small a walk and so little exercise.
A second course is brought in of crowns.
Theridamas, Techelles, and Kusani. Here are the cates you desire to finger, are they not?
Aye, my lord, but none save kings must feed with these.
'Tis enough for us to see them, and for Tamburlaine only to enjoy them.
Well, here is now to the Soldan of Egypt, the King of Arabia, and the Governor of Damascus. Now, take these 3 crowns and pledge me, my contributory kings. I crown you here, Theridamas, King of Argier, Techelles, King of Fez, and Usumcasane, King of Morocco. How say you to this, Turk? These are not your contributory kings.
Nor shall they long be thine, I warrant them.
Kings of Argier, Morocco, and of Fez, you that have marched with happy Tamburlaine as far as the frozen plage of heaven, unto the watery morning's ruddy bower, and thence by land into the torrid zone, deserve these titles I endow you with by valor and by magnanimity. Your births shall be no blemish to your fame, for virtue is the fount where honor springs, and they are worthy she investeth kings.
And since your highness hath so well vouchsafed, if we deserve them not with higher meeds than erst our states and actions have retained, take them away again, and make us slaves.
Well said, Theridamas. When holy fates shall stablish me in strong Egyptia, we mean to travel to the Antarctic pole, conquering the people underneath our feet, and be renowned as never emperors were. Zenocrate, I will not crown thee yet, until with greater honors I be graced.
And thus ends Act 4. We're now into extra time, so there are many things to cover there. We really have a game plan now from Tamburlaine. The world is not enough, but it's a good place to start. There's a juxtaposition, this talk to Zenocrate of, I'll spare anyone you like, as long as they yield. And then immediately, dog, get down to your slave. And it's that sudden switch that makes him so dangerous. Zenocrate's tiny line of yes, my lord. You were joining in with him earlier in baiting Bajazeth and Zabina, but then later on in the scene, it's just yes, my lord. You're thinking about other things. You're going to try your appeal again. Were you pretending to enjoy torturing them to play into the mood to get him more on side before you go to him? So many things. Thoughts, people?
I think actually it might be more the fact she's not a fast learner.
Or doesn't have much empathy till it's actually, doesn't have much empathy till she suddenly twigs, like you say, not a fast learner, suddenly twigs that could be her father in that cage. It's like, it's
like it's a complete switch of mindset.
Yeah, that teaches
again,
us some
the
empathy.
reality's hit, you know.
And we're seeing Tamburlaine rewarding people for following him and doing what he says. You know, he is, in that sense, he is beneficent, and everyone plays the game really well. We don't want to be kings, but if you insist we'll be a sort of king, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I mean that's good leadership there. I mean, to be fair, that's come from the beginning.
Well, yeah, because he's keeping his promises. He's following through, not just with his I am going to conquer everything, but also with, he said, didn't he? He said, I will make you kings, and so he has. So that's that's smart statesmanship.
There's an interesting contrast, I think, with also plays with Herod and Jesus, of Herod when Jesus is brought to him in some of the mystery plays, where Herod just goes, new toy, play for me, and Bajazeth in this does the whole thing of not going to say anything now, not going to eat your food, not going to drink your drink. I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. And that's a really quite powerful image. I think that's probably pushing it as a direct source, but it just came to me there as quite a similar thing of he's trying to retain his dignity under incredible pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it struck me that Bajazeth does some maintain defiance throughout.
Yeah.
Quite surprisingly, given what he's obviously going through. It's going, okay, you've got me, governor, but I'm damned if I'm going to lie down and base storm.
Yeah, he's not going to give it that at all. It's this progression of violence begetting more violence, getting crueler. And that, again, yesterday we were all quite happy. We were having fun with Tamburlaine and his murderous ways, and I think this really does bring down what this journey is, really very powerfully. I think that's well done, Mr. Marlowe. Good work, that man.
Absolutely.
Good work.
It's not just fun and games. It's playing these games with the audience to a purpose. So tomorrow we look at Act 5. We close the narrative, and if we ask very nicely, there might be more. I've heard a rumor that this play's gone down well, and there might be a follow-on. But
nice.
we don't know how this one ends yet.
Well, like a part 2 or something.
Yeah, there might be.
Yeah.
Really?
There might, yeah.
A sequel.
There's always these talks.
Season
in the
2.
works. Yeah, season 2 might be in the works, but we haven't finished season 1 yet. So there's I think more to come. But if you didn't know where this was going, where do you think at this stage the play would be going? Do you think Tamburlaine should win?
I think that that emperor's going to have to eat his own hand or something revolting. It's just it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
In the words of Private Fraser, doomed. We're all doomed.
Well, this is the thing. You know, do we think for a second that the people of Damascus or the Soldan's going to come out of this alive?
No.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take bets on it.
Because you know we know what Tamburlaine's like, so that's what we're going to find out tomorrow.
Awesome.
Any additional last thoughts, Pamela? Do you have anything? If you're there, I'm going to assume Pamela is no longer there. She might be there in spirit. Any other thoughts in the room?
Well, the fact that it's getting really exciting now is very, very good. Again, I mean, I love Marlowe's work really just for his language and his characters, and this is definitely one of the very rare plays that I can safely say that, you know, if you wanted to put it on stage, you can go so many ways with these types of interpretations, and I look forward to seeing how it ends tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm coming at it from a very different point of view because I've not read any significant Marlowe before at all. So, you know, it's a very interesting way, and I hadn't read ahead. So a lot of stuff was taking me by surprise as it happened.
So Alan, as someone who hasn't read ahead, what do you think is going to happen in Act 5?
Without knowing that there is a part 2, one would suggest it's all going to end up horribly. The question is who it ends up horribly for.
Yeah.
Did he know he was going to write a part 2, though? He didn't, did he?
Don't think so. Don't think so.
No,
It could have been considered as a two-parter. It was a thing that certainly happens, but whether it happened before or whether it was considered that way before, I genuinely don't know. And that's possibly one for the internet to inform us. Anyone who's watching this, do say. I will do more reading as we go along, but I'm trying not to lead witnesses too much at this stage.
Just don't go for a pint on Bankside.
Yeah. Yes. That could be quite painful. Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to thank you all for joining me again. Anyone watching at home, I've been Robert Crighton. This has been an exploration of Tamburlaine the Great, continuing anon. Bye all.
Thank you.